Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. With Philip Nothard and Curtis Hutchinson, bringing you all the chatter that matters.
Phil, you'll never guess what the big story of the week is, because it's almost as though we've rewound to 2020.
Yeah, a decade ago, isn't it? Yeah, well, it's more than that, isn't it? The Dieselgate, isn't it?
Well,
2015.
Yeah, but I think it was all resolved, wasn't it, in 2020?
So. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It rumbled on forever, and it is Dieselgate. Yeah, you're right.
We're resurrecting the hashtag Dieselgate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's returned to the headlines this week, and is pretty much the big story of the week as well. So we'll take a little look at that as our main story.
Yeah, we've got a couple of shout outs today because obviously there's a lot going on around the Chinese new entrants, particularly on the back of the September results, particularly here in the UK. So obviously we've had recent interviews themed around the Chinese new entrants brands, one being with Steve Young from last week, who's the MD of ICDP Consultancy and the managing director, I think he's managing director of Auto West London for the new Amode and JQ dealership in Chiswick. And obviously we also had Nick Thomas, didn't we, Curtis, who's the MD of Shanghai, and he was at the time launching Shanghai on the 16th of September, if I remember correctly, as they sort of debuted their brand in the UK.
Yeah, both interviews are definitely worth revisiting or visiting for the first time if you haven't heard them before, because it's great insight into how these new brands are being introduced into the UK, and certainly with Nick Thomas, brand new brand launched in September, and I think we will be revisiting that. We'll get Nick back on maybe sometime next year to see how the first 6 months went.
Yes, exactly. We should do that. And the other thing coming up is the AM Live at the Birmingham NEC, which is Curtis and I's annual get-together and selfie on the 12th of November. And it looks like it's going to be a great event. There's a lot of people getting down to this one, Curtis. It might be busier than last year.
Yes, a lot of activity and mentions on LinkedIn over the past week or so. So definitely worth making the effort to get to the NEC for that, because it's a great networking event, and there's some really good presentations there. Plus, all the suppliers are there, so lots to do. And that is the annual Motor Trade Radio day out, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because we'll have Mr. Godbold there, and I suspect Stephen Whitton will probably hanging around somewhere down there on the day as well. So all four of us will be able to get together.
There's the challenge.
Yes,
getting all four of us together at the same time for a photograph.
Yes, we'll organise that one. And the other thing is just to I was at an Interpath. I opened an Interpath seminar event last week, and just touching on that Chinese manufacturers, Chinese brands subject, that actually that came up into conversation from the supply chain within the UK, because there's concerns and optimism around the Chinese impact on the supply chain, because of product coming into that marketplace, and some concerns coming from that tier 1 to 4 supply network, but also those that are actually embracing the Chinese manufacturing and utilising it for their own good. So, yeah, interesting topic of conversation that is starting to emerge on that one.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. If you're a supplier and would like us to profile your business and reach our audience of dealer bosses, managers and decision makers on one of our dedicated supplier specials episodes, get in touch with Curtis and Philip at motortraderadio@yahoo.com.
Companies already featured in our supplier specials include Prospecting Dynamics, iVendi, ETT, Generational Tracker, MTC, Jigcar, and Checkwick. So you can find all of those in your podcast feed. And if you would like us to profile your business, then just get in touch with Philip or myself.
You're listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors.
Headlines this week come from the BBC, Financial Times, AM, Motor Trader, Motor Trade News, and Motor Finance. Now, this week we've got some legal updates, EV and hybrid buying trends, acquisitions, and financial year ends, starting with the return of Dieselgate, as we mentioned at the top of the show, with Mercedes, Ford, Renault, Nissan, Peugeot, Citroën collectively facing a major lawsuit in the High Court, accused of cheating on emission tests. And in response to another legal move, Close Brothers nearly doubled the provision it's made for the Financial Conduct Authority's recently announced redress scheme on finance mis-selling. And turning to consumer trends, we've got the latest Motors research, which finds that the most car buyers will consider an EV or hybrid for their next purchase. Then, after the midway break, we have the latest acquisitions from the US-owned Lithia Group and John Clark Motor Group. And we'll finish off with financial year ends from Motorpoint and Eden Automotive.
Yeah, so as you say there, Curtis, some big headlines initially, and as we were chatting earlier, that the first one is the return of hashtag Dieselgate, which takes me back a few years to that one, because at the time I was at Cap HPI and trying to manage the valuations of the market at the time around all of this. But we've got the story here in AM Online, and it's High Court Dieselgate trial begins against multiple OEMs, and this is in the High Court trial has begun to consider allegations that several manufacturers, major manufacturers, including Mercedes-Benz, Ford, Renault, Nissan, and Peugeot Citroën, fitted diesel vehicles with software designed to manipulate official emissions testing. Now, I think you and I were talking, because this is more about the damage on the environment and people in general.
Yes.
This is what this case is about.
Yeah, and that explains why it's it's back in the court. So this is separate to the big payouts that Volkswagen made back in 2020, and again that was a class action and resulted in an out of court payment in the UK of £193 million to 91,000 UK owners of VW cars. So, as you say, this court case started this week. But what's particularly interesting is that, it covers the manufacturers that you just mentioned, but other manufacturers named in the wider litigation include Vauxhall, Volkswagen, Porsche, Jaguar Land Rover, BMW, Suzuki, Volvo, Hyundai, Kia, Toyota, and Mazda. So a long list there, and it is very dependent on what comes out of this court case and how it will roll out to those other manufacturers. And this court case is going to roll on for many, many months, and we're not going to hear the outcome until I think it's March next year.
Yeah, and obviously there's a potential of a significant cost there, depending on the outcome and hitting those OEMs, depending obviously how the ruling goes. But they represent in a large proportion of claims, which is backing this of over 750,000 claims going into this. And that the case goes to the heart of corporate accountability and environment justice. So this is quite a big, significant case that's going to roll on. So we've kind of come out of the Supreme Court DCA obviously still ongoing, which we'll talk about next. But obviously this is now started in the background as well. So there's a lot for the sector, in particular the OEMs, to deal with at the minute.
Yeah, and in fact, I said we'll hear in March. In fact, that's when submissions on evidence will finish, and the actual ruling is anticipated in summer 2026. So this really is going to take a lot of time to get through, and we'll provide any updates that become apparent over the months. But yeah, this is massive, isn't it?
It is.
As you say, on the back of the FCA redress scheme, this is absolutely enormous.
And talking about the redress scheme, that in the Financial Times, it's been covered that Close Brothers nearly doubles car finance redress to 300 million. Now, within this story, it does obviously talk about that the FTSE 250 lender says increased provision reflects greater likelihood more cases will qualify for compensation. And this is in addition to Lloyd's Banking Group, isn't it, that they have actually increased theirs up to just short of 2 billion as a potential cost to that business.
Yeah, and Close Brothers said the increased provision that they've made reflects the greater likelihood that more historical cases would qualify for compensation following the FCA's recent ruling, as well as the possibility of higher compensation levels than it had expected. So this is really Close Brothers looking to see the ramifications, just how much is it going to be paying out. And it was actually very critical of the FCA, because the group criticised the regulator's methodology and said it does not believe the redress methodology proposed by the FCA appropriately reflects actual customer loss or achieves a proportionate outcome. And those words are very much reflected in some of the other lenders that are due to pay out under the redress scheme.
We've obviously discussed it at the time, going back to 2007, how it's going to be calculated, the access to the information of those finance agreements going back that far, in addition to the CMCs, the small claims, that we know there are multiple millions of the small claims that have been submitted, and they've been duplicatedly submitted as well. But there is a sign-off in this article saying that executives at BMW, obviously Captive Finance, are seeking a meeting with the Treasury to raise their concerns about the compensation plans, which threaten a 207 million hit to the finance arm of the car maker, according to the latest accounts. And Renault have also put aside 74 million to deal with the cost of this scheme. And obviously, just reverting back to that story previously, in addition to the Dieselgate case, looks like there is a significant cost hitting some of the OEMs over potentially the next 12 months, depending on the outcomes.
So I think we need some more upbeat news.
We do.
And I think I might have a story for us. So heading over to Motor Trade News, and the headline there is majority of car buyers expect next vehicles to be electric or hybrid. Motors research finds. So I did actually work with the team at Motors on this. This is the Consumer Insight Panel, which is their regular research that's been running for a number of years. And I think this is the 15th iteration of it, because these Consumer Insight Panel pieces of research are done 2 or 3 times a year. So, and what we're seeing now is it's great, because you can do comparisons between surveys and how attitudes are changing. So it's based on responses from 2,000 car buying decision makers, and it highlights a growing shift away from internal combustion engine models as barriers to EV ownership, continues to fall. And what it found was that nearly 1 in 4 respondents, so that was actually 23%, said their next car will be an EV. So this is talking about consideration for next vehicle purchases. And that was the highest level recorded by the Consumer Insight Panel research. And particularly notable rise given that only 7% of those respondents currently own an EV. But I think what's also interesting in these findings is the position of hybrids, because hybrids are proving to be even more popular, with 30% of those respondents expecting to choose a hybrid next time around, compared with 12% who currently own one. Petrol, of course, remains the most common fuel type, but that's expected to decline sharply from 62% at the moment to 36% in the next buying cycle, whilst diesel is projected to fall from 19% to 10%.
Yeah, and there's some nice comments in the article from Lucy Tugby, who's the marketing director there at Motors, and one that does stand out is that it's easy to become fixated with EVs and overlook the strong appeal of hybrids for many car buyers. Hybrids represent a lower risk alternative to EVs, as witnessed by their growing volumes in the new car market, and that's something we talked about in the on the September numbers, wasn't it? That
Yes.
And particularly the growth within BYD, JQ, Omoda, and other manufacturers, because I'm led to believe that the mix between EV and hybrid for BYD is about 50%. Give or take. So, it is a growing area. And I think now the technology, the range available on the EV, actually a lot of drivers say they can do a lot of their motoring on the EV element of the hybrid. But actually, when they need to do those longer journeys, they use the ICE part of that technology. So I think it's good for the sector. I think it's positive news that at least, there is a lot more the car buyers thinking about either an EV or a hybrid as their next choice of vehicle.
We'll be back after the break with more headlines covering acquisitions and financials.
You're listening to all the chatter that matters on Motor Trade Radio. Powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines from across the media, available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed.
So next headline is from Motor Finance, and it is Lithia UK acquires Hatfields Group for undisclosed amount. So this is the acquisition of Hatfields, which is a family-run North Yorkshire-based business founded in 1922. So certainly one of the oldest groups still in existence. And Lithia's acquisition was completed at the end of September, and the transaction includes 4 Land Rover sites and 1 Omoda JQ store. And this marks Lithia's first representation of those Chinese brands. But additionally, the Hatfield sites brings Lithia's UK Land Rover presence up to 11 locations. So it's really starting to give it that critical mass. And of course, Lithia is still a relatively new name in the UK. It completed its acquisition of Pendragon in February 2024. And certainly over recent months, we've been reporting on a sort of reshuffling of the Lithia pack as it buys occasional, the odd standalone sites and sold some sites as well. But this is a good acquisition because it really does give them that critical mass with Land Rover and a foot in the door with Omoda JQ.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think, obviously what is starting to present itself is obviously this alignment of manufacturers to the some of the groups. And obviously there was the recent move with Lloyd's Motor Group, moving out, taking on some Land Rover sites up in their territory, and Lithia coming out of that territory and focusing a little bit further south there. So you can see what's happening here. And as you say, I mean, what a time in the sector since 1922, as you said earlier,
Yeah.
Curtis. That I mean, I remember these guys as one of my competitors when I was in the Jaguar Land Rover sector, and yeah, it's a family business that's been going a long time, and yeah, it's sad to see them exit the market, but yeah, what a great acquisition for Lithia.
Yeah, and the story does actually confirm that the Hatfields brand name will actually be retained, and all the staff will remain in post. So it's good to see that continuity, certainly for the Hatfields name there.
Yeah, and sticking with dealers in motor trade news, John Clark Group, another northern one for you there, Curtis, acquires Hauco and Sons Group. So the acquisition has expanded John Clark's Audi, VW, Skoda, I said that wrong, didn't I? Volkswagen commercial vehicles presence in Scotland there. So a lot further north for you, that one, Curtis. Might take you a while to get there. But yeah, it's a fantastic. I mean, yeah, it's a great acquisition again for this John Clark, sort of demonstrating their growth in the sector there, and taking on that operation.
Yeah, another good acquisition, and as you say, very north. Dealerships in Elgin, Peterhead, and Inverness. So they've all now joined the John Clark network, and all employees will be retained. And Chris Clark, Group Managing Director of John Clark Motor Group, said, we're proud to welcome Hauco Group into the John Clark family. And he went on to say, this acquisition not only extends our presence into the Highlands, but also brings together two businesses with a shared commitment to heritage, customer care, and community. So, a really, really good fit there.
No, I couldn't agree more. And they're a great business at John Clark Motor Group as well. And moving over to AM Online, and this is Motorpoint builds on return to black with an 80% rise in pre-tax profit there. So Motorpoint has maintained a positive trajectory with an 80% rise in expected pre-tax profit to 3.6 million for the first half trading of its financial year. I presume that's 2025. And extending the strong recovery it reported earlier this year, saying that the used car supermarket group, which swung back to profit for the full year 2025 after several challenging years, and retail volumes rose 8.9% year on year for the 6 months to September the 30th of this year. The total revenue of 15% to 648 million. So that's a great turnaround for Motorpoint.
Yeah, and because Motorpoint is listed, the financials are very detailed, and there's some great figures in here because Motorpoint achieved record retail volumes in both July and August, the highest since 2018, outside the immediate post-lockdown period, with market share in those key 0 to 6-year-old vehicles increasing by 30 basis points to 2.45% during April to June, and profit before tax for the half year is expected to reach around 3.6 million, and that's up 2 million in the same period last year. So Motorpoint really back in recovery mode there. And growing, expanding. So some good strong half years from Motorpoint.
Should be very pleased with that one. And the final story for today is Eden Automotive recovery continues following cost cuts and closures. And this is Graham Potts' business in Eden Motor Group, and saying that the company made losses of 154,000 in the year to December 2024 compared to losses of 6.7 million the year before on turnover of a drop of 9.2% to 296.9 million. So obviously still not a great profit, but returning to a lesser loss, I suppose, in many ways, this one, Curtis.
Yeah, significantly cut those losses, and it does shed some light on trading for this year, because in the accounts filed, it says that trading is currently trading above budget in the first half of 2025 and was materially ahead of the same period in 2024. And goes on to say it cut costs towards the end of 2023 with the closure of 3 loss-making businesses. It also cut its finance costs by reducing vehicles in stock, and also, unfortunately, staff count has fallen from 663 to 597. So, Eden Automotive very much sort of refocused and looking more positive for certainly this year. So I think, despite those losses, I think they'll be pleased with where they are in 2025.
Yeah, as you say there, I mean, it's a mixed bag of financial results that we've been covering over the last few weeks there, as we get the full years for 2025 in, and the half year, either trading results or the interims as well. So really highlighting some of the challenges the retail motor sector are facing with costs, and I'm sure we'll cover a lot of this after the budget on the 26th of November, what we, Curtis, as to what the results are there. So hopefully we've managed to cover a lot of the big headlines. A bit of a shorter podcast for you this week. We've got a few big ones over recent weeks, but obviously the two big ones now is obviously the Dieselgate, that I'm sure we'll continue to talk about and cover, and obviously the impact and the response to the redress scheme, and how the manufacturers and the lenders and the captive finance really are dealing with that. So hopefully we'll keep you updated on all of those in future podcasts.
But that's all for now. So many thanks for joining us on the Motor Trade Radio podcast. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
Thank you for listening to the Motor Trade Radio podcast, powered by Motors, the driving force behind multi-site advertising. We'll be sharing all the URLs from this week's headlines on Monday morning. To make sure you receive them, just subscribe to the free newsletter on our LinkedIn page. Just search Motor Trade Radio Podcast.